before we get started, I do want to put this up so that everyone understands. Those of us that have been talking in the background, we understand that you could be triggered. This is one of those episodes. It's an amazing episode, but you could be triggered. And I know that at least here in the United States, we have a new national phone number, went live in June or July. So much the same as you might call 911, a new national 3-digit number for mental health, substance abuse, and suicide crisis is 988. And there are operators available to field your calls and see what you're going through and do the best that they can to help you. So I want to make sure that everyone was aware of that. I'll put that up now. And then when our interactive talk starts, we'll do that. There is a story that I recently heard that I absolutely love. A young lady was graduating from college, and her father wanted to give her a gift. And so he went out to the garage, and he gave her an old, beat up vehicle. I think it was a Mustang. It's old. It was, it's covered in dust. It looked like it needed a little bit of TLC. It looked like it needed some love. And he told her, he said, listen, before I give this to you, I want you to go to the pawn shop in town and see how much they'll give you for this car. And so she took it to the pawn shop, and the guy came out, he looked it over, and he's like, it's old, it's beat up. I don't think that, anyone would really like it. We'll have to put some work into it. So I'll give you a few $100s for it. And she's like, all right, thank you. And she took it back to her father, and she's like, she let him know what they said. He said, okay. He said, now before you make up your mind, he said, I want you to take it to the local Ford dealership and see how much they would give you for, and if you were going to trade it in, how much they would give you for an old Mustang. So she took it to the dealership, and they said, you know what, it's old, needs a little bit of work. I'm not sure if we would be able to resell it. We'll give you a couple thousand for it, or you can put it towards a newer vehicle, a brand new vehicle. And she said, okay, thank you. She told her dad, and he said, okay. He said, now one last place, and then you come back and tell me what they tell you. He said, I want you to take it to a local collectors, a car club. They're collectors. See what they say. So she took it to the car club of local collectors, and they came out and they said, oh my God. They said, is this a 1966 Shelby Ford Mustang? They said, do you know how rare this car is? Listen, I will give you $100,000 for this car right now. And she went home to her father. She was like beyond the moon. And she said, oh my God, Dad. She said, the first people, they offered me a couple $100. The next people, they offered me a couple $1,000. These people offered me $100,000 for this car. And he said, what I want you to understand from this is that you have to know your worth. You have to be in the right room and around the right people for them to understand what you're worth. And then not only that, you have to know your own worth. And I think for this particular deep dive, I called it On the Brink. And we'll get into that in just a second. I want to. Hello, Governor.
Hey, what's going on with you, my guy?
All right. I do want to welcome everyone to this very special live deep dive where we are covering season 5, episode 10 of Doctor Who, Vincent and the Doctor. Thank you to my wonderful co-host. And it's been far too long since we've done this. My wonderful co-host and my ace in the hole, Centel. Centel, say hello to the people.
What's going on? It's your boy Centel. We in the house for show. I love being a co-host. Just want to say, it makes me all.
I didn't
right on
realize
this
how
toe.
much I love it when you say that what's going on, like how you open up. I didn't realize how much I like hearing that. And thank you to all the people who showed up in the audience who are going to be with us. This is it's a special edition, and only the rewatch of this will only be available on my Patreon. I will cut this down to a highly edited version for the regular YouTube version. So thank you to everyone who's getting to catch this live. I want to bring back to stage, and thank you for coming back to stage, Centel, because this is going to be a dual deep dive. Let's quickly do a recap of Vincent and the Doctor. I think it was, so at this point, we are without Rory. Rory, unfortunately, met his demise at the end of the last episode. So now we have Amy and the Doctor. And he takes her to, it's to Paris, right? He takes her to Paris to the Musée d'Orsay, something like that. It's not the Louvre museum that you would normally think where all the wonderful things are, but it's a different museum where the paintings of Vincent Van Gogh. I didn't know that's how you said his name all these years. I always thought it was Van Gogh, and I'm glad that I heard it correctly. Van Gogh, where his paintings were on display, and it's interesting that the museum director is Bill Nighy, and people may recognize him from the Underworld series. He was someone in the comments put that he was Davy Jones in the Pirates of the Caribbean series. He was in Shaun of the Dead. Bill Nighy has been in so much stuff, and he is a fantastic actor. Yes. He is a super fan of Vincent Van Gogh's, and he is kind of directing people through the museum to see his exhibit. The Doctor notices something in one of the paintings. There's a painting of a church, and the Doctor looks at this painting of a church and sees a monster in the painting. He's like, wait a minute, that's not right. So of course, off to the TARDIS, him and Amy go, and they go back to the time of Vincent Van Gogh to visit him and figure out what is going on. They show up, and and people who are aware of the timeline of Vincent Van Gogh knows that he suffered mental illness back in what was he painting, the 1500s?
That's
late
a good
1500s?
question. I'm not sure.
I want to say it was. I want to say it was back then, and they went to the small town where he painted and where he lived, and he at this time, it's very interesting. He was not celebrated. He was almost detested. He was loathed by the people in this town. They thought he was a hack. He was terrible, and he would, no one would ever appreciate any of his work. And in the episode, the Doctor and Amy are huge fans of his work, and they're kind of starstruck a little bit. And when they start asking people around the town, where is he? They paint him out to be a drunk, and he's at the local bar sitting, and they're, as a matter of fact, they're kicking him out because he doesn't have enough money to pay for a drink. He tries to give him one of his paintings for a drink. They're like, don't nobody want that. So they offer to buy his drinks and talk to him. Now, at this particular time, he still had not painted the painting of the church. He hadn't done it yet. And some of his famous works, he hadn't painted any of those either. They talk to him and decide to just kind of stick with him, stick by his side to see what he's painting so they can figure out what he's going through. I forgot the name of it. Someone in the chat on Centel's reaction. And when this is done, I will put a link to the reaction that Centel and I did on this particular episode. Someone put in there that when you can see colors, or other people describe it as the aura around people, it's called synesthesia. And it's almost like when you hear music, we may, listen to the notes and the beautiful melodies, and other people can see the sounds, or they can look at people and see colors off of them. That's a whole nother discussion that we'll get into in a minute.
Okay.
I don't want to belabor this recap. I want to make this short so we can get to what we're going to talk about.
Okay.
There is a creature in the that attacks Vincent at his house. He's outside with Amy, and he is attacked by a creature that we can't see. It's invisible.
Yeah.
And it turns out that the doctor finds out that this creature, once Vincent gives him a description of the creature, he takes it to the TARDIS, so the TARDIS can, put it into his databanks and tell him what it is. This creature is from many, many, light years, galaxies away or whatever, but it was pretty much abandoned on Earth. And it's lonely. Jump in here right quick, Centel, because I just had one of those.
Yeah. So it's interesting parallels that they did with this. They brought in this creature that was a social creature, from my understanding, and apparently they ran around like large groups. But this one is left alone, and because it's left alone, it's terrorizing things. It's not really able to actually, I think, understand its place in the world. At least that's what I pulled from it.
Yeah.
And because our human companions and characters don't understand what's going on, they just think it's just this monster. It's this monster looming in the church. It's interesting parallels of that as well, regarding like a church being a safe space, but yet there's this demon lurking out of the window. This episode did some interesting things with that. Please stop me whenever you get your thought process, because I'll ramble. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I forgot, and I kind of, there's something I want to pick up later about it being a social creature. Long story short, the doctor, more than anyone, even though he travels with companions, being the last of his kind, being basically a solitary traveler, which is kind of his need for companions and why he always gets a companion. He understands this creature on another level, and where the sad thing is, he did not want to harm this creature. He really wanted to try to reason with it in a way to send it home. He just figured if he could find a way to knock it out, get it on the TARDIS, he could send it home, get it back with his peoples. But they did not get that opportunity.
Which plays an interesting part later on, because not everything can be fixed, right? That's a whole other conversation.
That's a whole different conversation. Right. And then not only that, we also see, and it's kind of one of those things about where we've talked about this before. We talked about this in the episode of the series of Supercell about having advanced knowledge when you're dealing with time travel. The fact is, we already know what's going to happen to Vincent Van Gogh. We know the path that his life is going to take. And the doctor is like, maybe these things might affect him where that doesn't happen to his life. The Vincent becomes smitten with Amy. He's like, he is trying to riz her up the entire time. He's like, hey, we need to have some babies. And we will make the ultimate. He tells her we'll make the ultimate ginger.
The ultimate ginger.
I was like, that is a hell of a thing to say. And I think because Amy is kind of starstruck with him and his talent as well, that she's kind of feeling him, a little bit, which is interesting because she had this obsession with the doctor, after he showed back up. She lost Rory and doesn't remember Rory. And now, so she's kind of feeling Vincent. They are able to defeat the creature, and I cannot remember the creature's name. But they are able to defeat the creature in the church. But before they leave, the doctor does something that's absolutely remarkable, I thought. And there were a lot of points in this particular episode that I was like, ooh, who is in here cutting onions? It's so dusty in here. But what he does was he takes Vincent, he lets him board the TARDIS with him and takes him to the present, at that time, the present, and takes him to the very same exhibit where they were at the beginning of the episode. And walking into this exhibit, Vincent missed all the signs that said that this was his exhibit until he saw his work in there. And he gets to see all the kids in there and all these people in there enjoying his work. And they go back to Bill Nye, and kind of with Vincent very close by in earshot, he asks Bill Nye, the museum director, he said, what do you think about Vincent Van Gogh's work? And he says the most eloquent, the most beautiful statement about Vincent Van Gogh's work. And he said something I thought was important, that Vincent Van Gogh was a tortured soul, and that he was able to translate his pain into beauty, which I think is so important, because, and we'll talk about this, that a lot of people are not able to transfer that pain into something else. That pain often devolves into suffering, and then a lot of times tragedy. And he was able to take his pain and, at least for a while, translate it into beauty. And Vincent was moved beyond words, and he hugged Bill Nye for saying the most wonderful thing about him, probably that he had ever heard in his life, about his work. This particular episode, it affects me on a number of different levels. I called this episode On the Brink, because from the outside looking in, it appeared that Vincent was on the brink of a mental breakdown, of a nervous breakdown. And one of the hardest things about mental illness and that type of suffering is that other people cannot see what you're going through. If you break your leg, other people can see your leg is broken, you're in a cast, you're in a brace, and they'll ask all the time, how are you doing? Are you getting, when do you get the brace off? When do you get the cast off? And they are concerned about your well-being. With mental illness, people may ask a very surface question about your well-being, but they have a very hard time understanding, and even sometimes having sympathy, empathy for your suffering and what you're going through. And it's a lot of times it's what people cannot understand, and they are dismissive to it.
Right.
I don't want to solo this, and I do want to, because I do have my own points in this, but I do want to bring in Centel again, because I think that we can both speak to this in a number of different and wonderful ways. And I don't want this also to run too long before we bring in some of our guests to do this live deep dive as well. So yeah, Centel, what are your thoughts about this?
First off, thank you for having this conversation, because it speaks to something that I think is very important in today's society, especially with the age of social media and everybody trying so hard to be seen. To be seen is just this craving that we have. It's this social urge. It's the reason why the monster was raging out, because it came from a social group, and it is by itself. It can't be seen. The creature is actually invisible. It can't be seen. Our pain is oftentimes invisible. Like you said, it's not like it's a broken leg with the bone sticking out. It's in your head. It can't be seen. And Vincent Van Gogh, somebody who I believe is a tortured soul, has this uncanny gift to see what can't be seen. He's able to see the beauty of the starry night. He's able to see the mundaneness of a sunflower. He's able to see Amy's pain when nobody else is able to see her pain except for her, but yet he's incapable of actually even seeing himself. There's something beautiful and tragic about that, and how something I think we all struggle with, to be seen, to be heard, to be noticed. And I think when Vincent finally gets to the point to get his flowers, he's given a gift that none of us will ever really get a chance to see. Well, not say that. Many of us aren't often privileged enough to get, and that is to receive your flowers, to be seen, to be heard. There's people that you walk around with every day right now that you should tell them how you feel about them. Tell them how important you are. Tell them what you mean. Vincent was able to do that with this beautiful gift by seeing all of his work being everywhere, and to know that he wasn't alone like this monster. He wasn't invisible. He had a massive impact to the art world, to other people. People come to see his works and are moved, and to be moved by somebody that it was that tortured enough to do the unspeakable was jarring. I think, it was, if you watched the reaction, you saw that we had a very, a physical reaction to it. It's the reason why you watch these reactions, so that you can see in real time how people respond. And I think each of us probably had our own journey regarding, like, dang it, there's this thing that I need to talk about, this thing that's bothering me, this part of me that needs to be expressed, because it's a light, or maybe it's darkness, and that darkness needs to be recognized. And I took from it, with my own personal journey, to see somebody else get that exhale. There was a bit of an exhale that I think that Vince Van Gogh had when you got a chance to see his work, and to hear somebody rant and rave about how good you are and you're doing a good job, or maybe you're a single mother that's not being seen because how difficult it is, or maybe you're having problems because of you're on the spectrum or something, or whatever this thing is that's not allowing you to see yourself as this beautiful person. We got to see Vincent see it, and then you all got to see us recognize that and recognize it within ourselves. I'm off my soapbox.
No, that's okay. So I'm going to say my piece, and then I'm going to close this out just for the editing for the YouTube versions. And then I'm going to come back to our discussion, all the people we have in here live, and bring a few other people to the stage, so we can kind of go in and dissect this, not only this episode, but this issue as well. I want to say that it's important. We have a saying, and we said it in the reaction as well. That's why it is important to give people their flowers now. One of the things I absolutely cannot stand is for people to stand up in a funeral and say all these beautiful things about people that you didn't tell them when they were alive. And sometimes our avoidance of the uncomfortable conversation, sometimes our grudges that we hold and we let people live rent-free in our head for years, preclude us from doing what sometimes other people need. A thank you or an I love you can go so far. I appreciate you can go so far. However, with mental illness, the thing is, you really don't know what's going on inside a person's head. And it's very hard for other people to deal with, because you try to rationalize it or make it logical to you. And it may not be that type of situation. Even as we're doing this now, like thinking back to that episode and thinking back to it is it started to give me some physical reactions to it. And as I come to stage, I'm also a person who is dealing with depression, and for a while there, very deep depression, and it is one of the factors that led to my divorce from my ex-wife and the breakup of our family. And I acknowledge that. And of course, it's not the only reason. But I was in a deep, dark place. Now, the funny thing about that is because it's invisible, you can't see that. And I was functioning, so I could still appear to be in social circles. I could appear to be in a good place. I could go to work every day, and while I'm working, while I'm engaged, idle hands and an idle mind is the devil's workplace. And when I was not in social settings, I wasn't at work, devil was all over my ass. Like, I couldn't get it together. I couldn't understand why. And I brought a lot of things into my marriage and my relationship with my ex-wife that I had not dealt with, and I didn't even fully understand. I was one of those type of people that I thought that depression meant that you wore all black all the time and you listened to emo and sad ass music, and you talked about unaliving yourself all the time. I did not understand it because all of my life I had been an extrovert, and I didn't even realize that in my marriage I had started to become an introvert.
Take your time, brother.
I didn't believe in therapy. I didn't think that, how is me talking to another person, stranger, telling them all my business, how does that help me get better? My mom was one of those people that didn't believe in therapy. She believed in prayer. Go to church, you pray, you have people pray for you, pray over you. That will get you together. And I found out the hard way that that is not true. I know for me, and I can't say what works for you. I know for me, therapy has worked. I've been in therapy for 5 years now. And the thing about therapy, it's not a miracle pill. It doesn't cure everything. You go to therapy 1 day a week for an hour, 50 minutes or whatever. All the rest of the week, that's on you. You got to deal with you. And that's why I told that story at the beginning about knowing your worth. The crazy thing about mental illness and feeling about you, where you may unalive yourself or feeling with deep depression or whatever you're going through. Sometimes it can be substance abuse. Sometimes you could just be on the verge of being overwhelmed and feeling like you're going to have a nervous breakdown because it's just all too much. A lot of that other people cannot see, they cannot relate to, they cannot deal with. And sometimes being in social settings, being around other people, even if they tell you they love you, they appreciate you, you're the best, you're tops, you're great. That is a brief reprieve from whatever it is that is plaguing you. And a lot of times the work you have to do on your own, finding your worth, finding the reasons to continue to live, to be better, to be happy. You have to do that on your own, and it's hard. It is one of the hardest damn things ever. Other people can look at your life and be like, why the hell are you sad? What is wrong with you? And I think women, this may be a blanket statement, and I may be completely wrong, but I think women have a not easier time dealing with this, but a lot of women suffer, and it's not talked about, it's not dealt with, postpartum depression. And it's one of those things, especially as a husband, as a father, as a spouse, as a mate, is a hard thing for you to deal with because you see the change in your spouse, your mate, but it's not even dealt with because you don't know how to deal with it. And a lot of times, some of the women, they don't even know that that's what they're going through. Now there's a name for it, and it just happens one day, and maybe one day it goes away. maybe it doesn't. And people in general dealing with depression, I know exactly some of the issues I was carrying with me into my marriage, and my previous divorce also kind of pushed me off the ledge. And then just stuff in the current marriage at the time pushed me off the ledge into a deep depression. So I can, look back and pinpoint some of the things that pushed me there. Some people have a harder time recognizing those things, and that's why the need for therapy. And the hardest thing for me to deal with as well was in going through therapy, I noticed that I had an immediate problem right now. I felt like my depression right now, my marriage is falling apart, my family is about to fall apart. I need to deal with this right now, get better so I can save my family. And the thing was, I had to go way, way back into childhood and deal with my familial issues there before I could even start dealing with my current problems. That is extremely hard because, who can tell you how much time you can't just go, 2 weeks in a row, be like, all right, dealt with all my daddy issues. Let's get to the current shit. Like, it does not work like that. And it took a couple years for me to even deal with that and be okay with that. And that's a whole nother discussion. And maybe we'll broach that in a few minutes. But that's, I do hope that everyone who's on the YouTube, and I hate to, make a shameless plug, but we're going to go into more into depth in this and have some more differing and points of view on not only this episode, but this topic in my Patreon. I do want to start doing a live every Friday. And I'll put the times out there. I do think on it because I think sometimes it is, while I enjoy and I appreciate every one of you who enjoy my deep dives, like I said, it's from my point of view. And I'm only one person. I enjoy these deep dives I have with Centel because I find that they're far more engaging, and he gives me ways of thinking about things that I don't normally think of on my own. And that's what I enjoyed about last week's deep dive that we did on Amy's Choice. That was so illuminating for me because Ariel and Sophie and Donnie Ellick were in there, and they had such other great points of view. And it really, sometimes when you're talking about something, it'll spark a memory, it'll spark something like, oh, yeah, I got a great point on that. Sometimes it's just better to just listen. And I appreciated that. I'm going to go ahead and close out this particular portion, the YouTube edited portion. I do want to thank each and every one of you. Please like, comment, subscribe, share this as much as possible, share it. But also, if you've not subscribed, please subscribe. We are really close to hitting 1,000, and I can't be more ecstatic. And for some people, that may not be a big deal. I understand you have thousands and millions of subscribers. Listen, I just started my page for real on March 28th of 2024. And so to have done this much in a few months, talking about movies and television and giving a little bit of my own personal, is really, it's major for me. And I thank all of you for that. When we get to 1,000, I will do a kind of, not a raffle, but I will do a random choosing of a subscriber and send them. I've got some t-shirts, I've got some merch and things like that. Just, Centel has been very responsible in pushing me to get to a better place, including really pushing me to start this page, to restart it and do what I've been doing. So I cannot thank him enough for that. I thank my brother Chuck for getting me out of my comfort zone and having me do the guest spots that became permanent spots on the Geekish Network. And I thank Centel for getting me to do this, along with co-hosting on a number of series and movies with him. I'm extremely thankful to have this platform and to be able to do this and have some people find value in it. So thank all of you on here. Remember, at all times, it's got to be about this, but it's got to be about this too. Thank you, Chef. Thank you.
Thank you, Chef.